Before we begin, welcome to Still Missing. We dig into the world's most haunting, unsolved cases. New episodes every week. Subscribe so you don't miss a single case. On December 26, 1900, a relief vessel called the Hesperus arrived at the Flannan Isles, a small, remote group of islands in the Outer Hebrides, about 20 miles off the west coast of Scotland. The ship had come to deliver supplies and rotate the crew at the Flannan Isles Lighthouse, which sat on the largest island, Eilean. But as the Hesperus approached, the crew noticed something wrong. There was no flag flying from the lighthouse flagpole, no signal from the landing platform, and the light, which was supposed to burn every night to guide ships through some of the most dangerous waters in the North Atlantic, had been dark for 11 days. When the relief keeper, Joseph Moore, climbed the steep path to the lighthouse and pushed open the door, he found it completely empty. The three keepers who had been stationed there, Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur, were gone. The clock on the wall had stopped, and untouched meals sat on the kitchen table. One chair had been overturned, as if someone had stood up in a hurry. Two of the three sets of oilskin coats and boots were missing from their hooks by the door. The third set remained. Whoever had left last had gone out into the December storm without any protective clothing at all. No bodies were ever found. No trace of the three men was ever discovered. The Flannan Isles Lighthouse had been built just the year before, in 1899. It was an important navigational aid for ships traveling through the waters west of Scotland, a stretch of ocean known for its violent storms, unpredictable currents, and towering waves. The lighthouse was designed to be manned at all times by a team of three keepers who would rotate on and off the island. Every few weeks, it was a lonely, difficult posting. The islands were uninhabited, battered by Atlantic storms, and accessible only by boat in favorable conditions. In December 1900, the three men assigned were Thomas Marshall, the youngest at 28, calm and methodical. James Ducat, 43, was the principal keeper, experienced and respected. Donald MacArthur, 40, was the occasional keeper, a strong but temperamental man, known for dark moods and occasional outbursts. The last entry in the Lighthouse logbook was dated December 15, 1900, 11 days before the relief vessel arrived. The log entries from the preceding days painted an unusual picture. Marshall had recorded severe storms striking the island from December 12 onwards. He noted that the waves were exceptionally violent and that Ducat had been quiet and distant. In one entry, he wrote that MacArthur had been crying. Another entry noted that all three men had been praying together. These entries were highly unusual for a lighthouse log, which typically contained only factual weather observations and operational notes. Personal emotions were almost never recorded. For experienced keepers to be praying together suggested that they were facing something they believed was genuinely life-threatening. However, when investigators later checked weather records from the region, they found a puzzling discrepancy. The weather stations on the nearby islands of Lewis and the Scottish mainland recorded no unusual storms during the period of December 12th through 15th. The severe storms described in Marshall's log did not match the conditions recorded elsewhere in the area. Either Marshall was describing highly localized weather that didn't affect the wider region, which is possible in the unpredictable waters of the Outer Hebrides, or the log entries were inaccurate, exaggerated, or written under duress. Some researchers have even suggested that the final log entries may have been fabricated or altered after the disappearance, though there is no concrete evidence to support this theory. The physical evidence at the lighthouse provided limited clues. The light mechanism was in good working order, but had not been lit. The oil supply was adequate. The provisions were stocked. Everything inside the lighthouse was in order, except for the overturned chair and the uneaten meal. Outside, the picture was different. On the western landing platform, the side of the island most exposed to the open Atlantic, there was significant storm damage. Iron railings had been bent and twisted. A heavy stone block, weighing more than a ton, had been dislodged from its position and moved. A life buoy, and its rope had been torn from their mounting. The storage chest at the top of the cliff, where ropes and equipment were kept, had been ripped from its concrete foundation and its contents scattered. Whatever had happened on the western side of the island involved extraordinary force. The official investigation was conducted by Robert Muirhead, the superintendent of the Northern Lighthouse Board. His report concluded that the 3 keepers had been swept out to sea by a sudden, massive wave while attempting to secure equipment on the western landing platform during a storm. In his reconstruction, Muirhead proposed that 2 of the keepers, Marshall and Ducat, whose coats were missing, had gone out to the western platform to secure the equipment damaged by the storm. When they got into difficulty, MacArthur rushed out to help them without stopping to put on his coat or boots. All 3 were then struck by a rogue wave and carried into the sea. This explanation has been the accepted official account for over a century, but it has always faced criticism. Experienced lighthouse keepers knew the rules. Under no circumstances were all 3 keepers supposed to leave the lighthouse at the same time. One man was always supposed to remain inside to maintain the light. For all 3 to be outside simultaneously represented a fundamental violation of protocol that career keepers like Ducat would have been unlikely to make unless the situation was truly desperate. The theory also doesn't fully explain the overturned chair and the half-prepared meal inside the lighthouse, which suggests a sudden departure from the kitchen, not a planned trip outside to check on equipment. Alternative theories have proliferated over the years. One suggests that MacArthur, known for his dark moods and volatile temperament, may have snapped during the isolation and attacked the other 2 keepers. In a struggle, all 3 could have ended up in the sea. This would explain the overturned chair and the emotional log entries about crying and praying. However, there is no physical evidence of violence inside the lighthouse, and the storm damage on the western platform was independently verified. Another theory involves a freak wave phenomenon known as a wave surge. The geography of the Flannan Isles, with their steep cliffs and narrow gullies, can amplify wave energy dramatically. A sudden, unexpected surge of water up the cliffs could have reached heights well beyond what the keepers anticipated, sweeping anyone standing on the western platform into the sea in seconds. Such events have been documented at other exposed lighthouse locations around the world, and the physical damage to the railings, stone blocks, and equipment is consistent with this kind of extreme wave event. What remains is a mystery defined by absence. No bodies, no definitive explanation, no witnesses. 3 men simply vanished from a locked lighthouse on a remote island in the middle of winter, leaving behind a stopped clock, an untouched meal, and a chair knocked over in haste. The aftermath of the disappearance had a lasting impact on the lighthouse service. The Northern Lighthouse Board immediately changed its protocols. From that point forward, 4 keepers would be assigned to remote island stations rather than 3, to ensure that even in an emergency, someone would always remain inside the lighthouse. The incident also prompted a review of safety procedures at exposed maritime installations across the United Kingdom. The families of the 3 missing men received no bodies to bury and no definitive answers. Thomas Marshall's fiancée waited years for him to return before eventually accepting that he was gone. The sea around the Flannan Isles is as violent and unpredictable today as it was in 1900. The lighthouse was automated in 1971, and no human keeper has been stationed there since. The islands are uninhabited. SEABIRDS are the only permanent residents now. Occasional visitors, researchers, historians, and the curious make the difficult crossing to Eilean Moor and climb the path to the lighthouse. They find a solid, well-built structure that has survived over a century of Atlantic storms. Inside, the rooms are empty. The mechanism that once held the light has been replaced by solar-powered equipment, but the feeling of isolation is unchanged. But on dark winter nights, when the automated light sweeps across the waves, some sailors still tell the old story. 3 men in a lighthouse, a light that went dark, and an empty room with a meal no one finished. If you are interested in further research, the Northern Lighthouse Board maintains historical records at the National Records of Scotland. Next time, Kansas City, 1935. A man checks into a hotel under a fake name. He asks for a specific room. He asks that no calls be put through. When staff finally open the door, he's blindfolded, bound, and fatally wounded. No one has ever identified him. Room 1046. Don't miss it. 3 men, an isolated lighthouse, and no explanation. Rogue wave, madness, or did they try to leave and get swept away one by one? What's your read on the Flannan Isles? Drop it below. If you just sat through that entire video without blinking, you belong here. Subscribe. This is Still Missy. Some cases never close.